Prop 51 authorizes the state to sell $9 billion in general obligation bonds to support school facility projects. Now, $7 billion of this would go towards K-12 districts, and the remaining $2 billion would go to community colleges. Before I speak more about what Prop 51 does, I want to explain how the current school facility program works. For nearly 2 decades, California has had a cost-sharing arrangement whereby both the state and local districts share in the cost of school facility projects. On the K-12 side, districts will submit proposals to the Office of Public School Construction, which then vets the projects and determines which ones to fund. For new construction projects, this is the purchase of land, the design of buildings, the actual construction costs of the buildings. The state contributes 50% of the project share. For renovation projects, these are projects for which the buildings are at least 25 years old, the state contributes 60% of the project share. The state can contribute a larger share if the district is facing particularly dire financial straits. On the community college side, it's a slightly different process in that the chancellor's office develops a set of criteria to determine which projects to bring forth to the legislature, and then the legislature works with the governor's office through the annual budget process to determine which projects to fund. So, turning back to what Prop 51 would do, as I mentioned, it would authorize the state to sell $9 billion in GO bonds. $2 billion would go to community colleges and $7 billion to K-12 districts. $3 billion would be for new construction projects, $3 billion for modernization projects, and the remaining billion would be split evenly between career technical education facilities and charter school facilities. The money would go out largely in accordance with the state's existing school facility program. The total cost of the measure to the state would be about $17.6 billion. $9 billion of which would be in principal repayments, and the remaining $8.6 billion would be in interest costs. Now, what this would mean for the state on an annual basis would be that the state would pay an additional $500 million per year out of the state's general fund in debt service payments. Thank you.
Well done. It's very difficult to get through them that quickly. Nicely done. Okay, so a little bit about endorsements. We have the California Democratic Party, the California Republican Party, so they're actually both on the same side on this, if you can imagine such a thing. That never happens. And then some Democratic clubs. And then in opposition, we have the Libertarian Party and the California Peace and Freedom Party. We also have support for this measure from a bunch of education organizations, business organizations, unions, and school districts. Opposition from California taxpayers. And then for officials, we have Democratic and Republican officials, including the state superintendent of public instruction and the former state superintendent of public instruction, and then the governor on the other side. He's a debt hawk, as we know, so that explains that. And then support, most of the media organizations that have come out one way or the other are against. And then as far as money goes, we have $9.5 million that have been spent on this, all in favor of it. And it's from building companies, for the most part, and you can imagine why that might be. Yeah, okay, you get it. Are there questions on this one? We have some over here.
I wanted to know why the charter schools are included. If we have the public school K-12 and we have the community colleges, but why the charter school? That's a private kind of quasi-school.
Proposition 51 does allocate $500 million, or would allocate $500 million for charter schools. The state has historically contributed towards the cost of these school facilities. As far as the motivation for including it in Prop 51, I think that might be a question for the proponents.
And one more question over here.
Thank you. Just wondering why the state college and the universities are not included.
Again, that's largely a question for the proponents, but I do want to say that $2 billion is allocated towards the community colleges. So the state universities that are excluded in this measure would be the University of California and the California State Universities.
As a professor at California State University, I'm with you, sir. All right, I'm afraid we need to move on because there are 17 ballot measures. At the end, we'll have a roundup. If you have one burning question, we'll have time for more questions at the end.